Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah, member of the Energy and Judiciary Committees. Great to have you in focus. I want to start with the gas tax holiday, and it would be 90 days, 3 months, 90 days. And the election, the midterms, are 139 days away. So Biden would have to capitulate and put the gas tax back into play just days before his party goes to the midterms. That seems political suicide to me.
It does, and it is. This is part of a shameless and feckless cover-up operation. Look, this is the predictable, foreseeable, and in fact intended result of President Biden's energy policies, which have as their intended outcome driving up costs of fossil fuels, safe, affordable, reliable, in America, plentiful fossil fuels to transition into other foreign-made sources of energy that can't easily be transferred into automobiles. This is a big problem. So he's wanting us to cover that up by shifting around some tax revenue. It's, number one, a drop in the bucket, wouldn't really offer meaningful relief. As one of my colleagues just noted, 6% of the increase in the price of fuel is represented by the 18.4% federal gas tax. This is a disaster all the way around, and he wants us to cover it up.
You know, I wonder, Senator, if this backfires in some way, too. I mean, some economists, and we were just reporting this through Jackie Heinrich, say this could drive demand back up when Americans are getting ready to hit the road. Maybe some of them will say now, well, I'm saving 18 cents. Let me buy the gas now while I can, and we can hit the road, which drives us into potential shortages, doesn't it?
Yes, it absolutely does, especially given that President Biden, look, he canceled the Keystone Pipeline. He has shut down oil and gas leasing. He's claimed to have lifted the moratorium, but it's still in place with regard to 80% of all onshore leasing operations. And as a result, these oil companies don't have quite enough to develop. And he says he wants more, but then he takes away from them the ability to produce it. He says he wants more refining capacity. If he really wanted to do something about it, maybe he ought to lift his moratorium, and maybe he ought to push legislation that would make it easier and more affordable for us to build a refinery. We could pass one of the reform measures, like legislation that I've introduced that would streamline the approval process. But no, instead, he wants to shift money around and cover this up with a tax holiday.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. If he wanted to do something about this, that isn't very green of him if he doesn't let the prices continue to go up. And he's got to answer to that far left side of his party this close to the midterms to help his, downstream from the White House as Democrats win. Yet he does this and it hurts them. Back and forth, back and forth. Let's get to this. The president and White House officials have been pushing the recession is not inevitable talking point. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says had this to say about the economic crisis yesterday.
We see that our economic strength that we have seen from this past year, from the action that the president has taken with the American Rescue Plan, with what we have seen with the historical gains, that is going to help us deal with the recession.
I don't know. That felt a little bit like a word salad to me. What was she talking about?
For a small handful of Wall Street billionaires? I mean, yes, the wealthy and well-connected can get very rich in an economy like this one, fueled by the federal government just printing money that it doesn't have. But you know who else gets hurt? Who does get hurt while they benefit? Everyone else. Poor and middle-class Americans, hardworking Americans of every stripe, other than the extremely wealthy and well-connected, are made poorer by this, and they're the people who can least afford it. So, I'm thrilled to hear that she's speaking there to a very small constituency of people who have made great gains. But everyone else has suffered, and they've suffered by design under a president who wants to impose his far-left agenda at the expense of hardworking Americans.
Well, and what's so interesting, too, you say she's speaking to a relatively small group who are still doing well. But even they understand where we are. Elon Musk has a response to President Biden claiming that the recession is not inevitable. Let's watch together.
Well, I think a recession is inevitable at some point. As to whether there is a recession in the near term, I think that is more likely than not. It certainly isn't. It's not a certainty, but it appears more likely than not.
More likely than not. And that's what experts are saying. They're putting it north of 40% probability now, Senator.
Yeah. Yes, putting it north of 40%, and everything the Biden administration seems to be doing will have a natural tendency of accelerating and making that much more inevitable a recession, while at the same time also driving up inflation. I mean, think about it, Harris. If he just suspends this gas tax for a period of 3 months, first of all, he would end up extending the suspension before the midterms for the reasons you alluded to a minute ago. But even if it were just 3 months, there's a lot of revenue that still has to go. We still have to pay for the upkeep and the maintenance of our interstate transportation network, our interstate system. So where's that money going to come from, Harris? We're just going to have to borrow more of it, effectively printing more of it. You know what that does? That spikes inflation even more. That's why this is treacherous. This is wrong, and we can't let it happen.
I want to get to this because this case is moving forward now. Senator Lee, the California man who's accused of attempting to assassinate Justice Brett Kavanaugh, is actually due in court. It's his first court appearance today. And he could get the Roe decision by tomorrow. We all could. The pro-abortion group, Jane's Revenge, is promising a riot in the nation's capital if the high court overturns that decision. Authorities, though, are continuing to allow illegal protesting outside justices' homes, which endangers them and their families. The radical group Rise Up for Abortion Rights held a large protest outside the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday as justices were issuing opinions. Some might look at this as intimidation. That's also against the law. That's the same group that protested outside the home of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, complete with dolls and fake blood props. I know that you have a new book that went up for sale this month. It's called Saving 9, The Fight Against the Left's Audacious Plan to Pack the Supreme Court and Destroy American Liberty. Are you concerned about that, especially now? What are your deep concerns?
Yeah, I'm deeply concerned about this, Harris, because as I explained in Saving 9, and for the reasons you just identified, there's a massive group on the left, on the far left, that wants to demonize, delegitimize, and isolate those Supreme Court justices considering joining the Alito opinion. And you're also right. There are many ways that the American people, most ways the American people can protest, demonstrate, gather, are legal. And in fact, they're constitutionally protected.
Yes.
But there are some that are illegal. And it is illegal. It's a criminal violation under 18 U.S.C. Section 1507 to show up to the private residence of a Supreme Court justice to demonstrate, to try to influence them. That's exactly what's happening. And why these groups like Ruth Sent Us and Jane's Revenge, why they're not being issued injunctions, why they're not being prosecuted or at least investigated is beyond my ability to understand. Why people who show up there aren't being stopped or arrested or at least threatened with arrest if they show up and do that is beyond my ability to understand, unless, of course, they just want it. And, you know, in fact, we know that because President Biden's spokesperson just a few weeks ago acknowledged that he supports these efforts. This is really troubling. And I explain in Saving 9 the things that I predicted when I wrote the book would happen if and when we got to this moment where the Supreme Court was poised to overturn Roe versus Wade. And the left would try to demonize the Supreme Court and delegitimize it, culminating in a plan to pack the Supreme Court. I explain in Saving 9 why that would be a horrible idea and it would undermine the entire Constitution.
And all of that is political. But what we're seeing now is actually dangerous to citizens. I mean, imagine being the family members of those conservative justices inside their homes. And we have good law enforcement to be there. But when a large group shows up, unpredictable things can happen. And as you say, at least investigate it. If you're not going to hold tight to the federal law, at least investigate. Senator Lee, thank you for being in focus. Good to see you.
Thank you, Harris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.